Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are midway through July, more than halfway through the 2029 season, and it's been a pretty successful season on the field for Buffalo so far. We are 5-6 though in the month of July, which has dropped us out of first place for the first time in a long time. We're now a game behind the Mets in the National League East. Still well positioned for the wild card, the number one team in the race for the four wild card spots in the National League. 5 games up for the final spot at this point. So the season's been pretty successful, although hopefully we can play a little better and ensure that we also continue our streak of winning records in this month of July when all is said and done. We've just gotten through the All-Star break and the amateur draft, so our attention over the final couple weeks of the month is going to turn directly towards the trade deadline. And given that we are a win-now team that is trying to win it all this year, we're going to try to be creative around the trade deadline. Now, the reason we need to be creative is that we've only got a little over $60,000 available to bring on some talent. So we're going to have to get very creative if we're going to add some talent to this team. The good thing is that I do feel like we are in a position of strength. We don't have any glaring holes on the team. Taking a look at our most frequent lineup, Deshaun Seifu, our leadoff hitter, hitting close to 300 with 60 stolen bases. Marcelo Meyer and Adley Rutschman both hitting in the 280s with some power. Last year's Rookie of the Year, our DH Samuel Basallo. Batting average has dipped down to 236, but he still leads the team in homers and ribbies. Vance Honeycutt hitting over 300 with good power. First baseman Takao Ota enjoying a sophomore resurgence in the United States after a pretty rough rookie year, 258 average, and he is second on the team in homers and third in ribbies. Eric Pena in left field is having a bit of a down year. That's an area that we could potentially look to improve. Jace Barofin is actually bouncing back a little bit from a disappointing season last year. And then Nolan Jones, who's been platooning at third base with Kevin Made, not having a great year offensively, and either is Made. So if we were to make a move offensively, I think it would be perhaps adding a really big proven bat in left field, or perhaps adding someone who is an everyday third baseman who could take over for the platoon there between Jones and Made, but really don't feel like any of those are critical needs. Similarly, when we think about our pitching staff, you can see among our starters, highest ERA is 4.08. Number 5 starter Sean Sullivan is a 2.85 ERA. Otani, Bieber, and Kim are all in the mid threes, and at some point we will be getting Hayden Yinger back in about a month. And all he had done this year was go 5-1 with a 1.74 ERA. So honestly, when we add him, hopefully in late August, early September, after he does his rehab assignment, assuming he gets back healthy and well within the time frame that we expect right now, that'll be a nice boost for our rotation as well. And the bullpen is also doing well. So we don't have glaring holes that we need to fill, and we don't have a ton of money to fill those holes, as I talked about. But I have gotten a bit aggressive, and I made a trade offer earlier today for one of the top players who is on the trade block. I tend to think the opposing team is going to laugh in our face about this offer and say that the only way the deal gets done is if we send them someone like Deshaun Seifu or Vance Honeycutt. But I'm trying to get creative. I'd love to add some talent. We're trying to win it all, and we're going to have teams basically retaining all of the salary of anybody that we bring on board to make things work. So not sure how much we're going to get done, but we will try to improve this team as we try to improve from the 101 wins that we had last year and made it to the NLCS. Would obviously love to have over 100 wins again this year, but even more important than how we do in the regular season is going to be hopefully getting this team to take another step further and get to the World Series. And if we do get to the World Series, obviously we're going to want to win if we get there. And not surprisingly, that offer that we made that I talked about was dead on arrival in Colorado. We were trying to pick up Spencer Strider, who is on the trade block. They picked him up from Atlanta last off season, 4-3 with a 3.11 ERA for them this year. And Atlanta did retain 40% of his contract. We were trying to get them to retain the other 60% so we could bring him on board. And we offered them the reliever River Ryan, who's been pretty good. 59 strikeouts and 49 in the third innings after we picked him up in the Rule 5 draft. 3.10 ERA. Still a guy who's making the major league minimum at this point. Doesn't even have a full year of service yet. So we're hoping there might be some path to make that happen, but it was really a complete hope trade. We didn't think there was any way that we were going to get Strider on board. And you can see that they didn't even come back and tell us, hey, we're only a player away. So we may try to keep doing something. Obviously, he's a complete rental for us, so I don't want to go crazy. There's absolutely no way we're going to be able to sign a big-time free agent this upcoming offseason after signing Rutschman this past offseason. You can see right now with arbitration, our expected payroll is set to go up by about $7 million next season, when we'll already be losing guys like Shane Bieber, Camilo Doval, and backup catcher Joey Bart. So no obvious way that we would be able to keep Strider if we brought him on board, unless we somehow traded away Ohtani and decided we wanted to build around the slightly younger Strider. But I don't really think it's practical to think that we're going to be able to make all of those things happen. Probably not even practical to think that we're going to be able to bring him on board this year. But as I mentioned, I am all in on trying to win with this team. As we've talked about when I brought Rutschman on board, a small part of the reason that I brought Rutschman on board, because I just wanted to bring a big-time offensive and defensive catcher on board regardless. But part of the reason I was willing to make that commitment last offseason was that with Ohtani, Painter, Yinger, and Bieber, this is really the last year that we're going to have those four guys at the top four spots in our rotation. I think it's going to be really hard to bring Bieber back. Right now he's looking for $14.4 million a year over 3 years. If we could get real creative with a contract this offseason, maybe there's something we can do. But my thought is that the rotation next year is likely going to be Ohtani, Painter, Yinger, and then right now would feel okay with Kim and Sullivan with the way that they've pitched as our fourth and fifth starters. Clearly, if there's a way to add a Spencer Strider this year and then to retain a Shane Bieber or Spencer Strider next year, our rotation would be even better. But I think we have pushed the financial capabilities of this franchise to the brink at this point, and we've already taken scouting and development down significantly more than I would like them to be, and we're obviously having a very small draft budget this year, picking towards or at the end of the first round and at the end of every round. So I would prefer not to continue to pull money out of scouting and player development, given that I do want to try to build something sustainable here. So I think it's unlikely that Bieber will be back with us, and even if we bring Strider on board somehow, I think it's unlikely that we'd be able to bring him back also. But I also think it's probably less than a 10% chance that we're going to be able to get something done that would land a Strider that I'm willing to do over the next couple of weeks. But we'll keep trying. And before we continue on with these last couple weeks before the trade deadline, talked a bit in previous episodes and probably a bit more so just in the comments with some viewers about trying to improve the play on the field of our minor league teams this year. And what we did to try to do that was just ensure that we had a few more established players, even at the lower levels, our rookie ball teams. Typically, I've got a pretty good mix of established players in A ball and above, but sometimes I do tend to try to keep those rookie ball teams with just teenagers and 20-year-olds. And the results on the field last year for both our FCL and our DSL teams were pretty brutal. So I did layer in a couple veterans to those teams this year. The teams are doing better, but they're not doing great. You can see we've got a winning record in AAA Albany, got a pretty solid club in AA Utica. High A Jamestown is borderline respectable. Our single A team in the FSL is actually pretty disappointing this year with a winning percentage below 400. And then when you look at our FCL and our DSL teams, 13 and 21 and 14 and 19, 382 and 424 winning percentages. So obviously the changes we've made haven't been dramatic enough to get those teams very competitive on the field. Sadly, those winning percentages for each of these teams are materially higher than they were a year ago, so they've made a little bit of progress. I think Buffalo is up 30 or 40 points in winning percentage in the FCL from where they were, and the DSL team I think is doing even better compared to last year, but still not lighting it up. It's definitely a balancing act because we've got a lot of prospects on all of those teams, especially our Rookie League FCL team that we want to ensure get playing time too. So I want to reserve a spot or two on the pitching staff for guys who can help and a spot or two in the lineup for more established guys who can help us win games. But I also want to ensure that the 10 or 12 guys on each of those teams that are somewhat legitimate prospects are also getting regular playing time as well. So obviously not a balancing act that I've done particularly good at this season. But the Rookie League teams, sadly, with those records, are doing a little better than they did a year ago. And we did throw in a couple more prospects in a rebuttal to Colorado, and they still say no way, not surprisingly. First baseman Joel Larson, not a big-time prospect. Really all he has is home run power. But Jonte Powers is a more legitimate prospect, a guy that we picked in the second round 3 years ago at this point. Only hitting 207 with 8 homers in A-ball for us this year, but still has a good personality, has made some progress. Not a top 100 type prospect, but not looking at his potential profile. It's not completely clear that he can't be a useful player at the major league level someday, but I think it's been a shot in the dark to try to get Strider, and when I saw he was on the trade block, I figured I would give it a try, but I'm not going to completely rip the minor league system apart to bring him on board as much as I want to win this year, and he could certainly help any team in baseball increase their chances of winning. Our pitching has been very solid, and as I mentioned, we'll be getting Yinger back hopefully in a month and a half anyways, and that'll almost be like a guy we traded for since he's missed a fair amount of time at this point. And we've kind of pivoted a bit to maybe trying to bring on a third baseman to help us. Tried to get Andres Alvarez from the Dodgers, kind of a natural second baseman, but he could play third. He's having a rough year for them, hitting just 215, does have 14 homers and 321 at-bats, but his batting average and his OPS have both been trending in a pretty negative direction over the last few seasons, along with his WAR. So thought we might be able to get the last year or the last few months of his contract, but we didn't really offer them all that much. River Ryan, the same reliever that we included in the proposal for Strider that went nowhere. Nolan Jones, who Alvarez would be replacing at third base, and then backup catcher Jake Rogers, because moving on from Nolan Jones would get rid of the only captain personality we have at the major league level right now. So we were throwing in our backup catcher Rogers, who has not done much for us, so we could bring up the captain personality in Joey Barth that we have in AAA for us right now to take over as our minor league catcher. So doesn't seem like that is going anywhere. There are still a few more options out there at third base or corner outfield that we're going to keep working up. But with that deal, the only way to get it done was to put in Deshaun Seifu. So I guess it's progress that this deal was not so unrealistic, that there's actually a way for us to get it done, unlike those Strider deals that we proposed. But we are certainly not going to get rid of Deshaun Seifu for a rental infielder. And we're a little closer with this same package of Jones, Rogers, and River Ryan, but we keep kind of going down in what we're looking for. We're looking now at a 38-year-old Nolan Arenado, still a pretty darn good defensive third baseman, captain personality, and definitely has a little bit of pop left in his bat with 14 homers and 340 at-bats this year, hitting 250. OPS plus and WRC plus both below average, but particularly against left-handed pitching, he still can do some damage. And somehow this year we have pivoted to where we're not doing that well against left-handed pitching, so he could probably help us a bit on that front. But we're still not really close to the deal because we need to either add in a big-time major league player or one of the top prospects in our system to get a deal done. If I can make it up in volume, I might consider bringing him on board, but I don't think I'm going to give up a big-time prospect for a few months of Arenado. I think he's definitely an upgrade from Jones in my day at third, but not such a big upgrade that we're going to move mountains to try to bring him on board. And I think I have pieced together a deal to bring Arenado onto the wings as our third baseman. And I kind of did it in a way where we're just giving them volume. There's nothing of particular value here. Granted, a 38-year-old Nolan Arenado in return is not necessarily great value that we're getting back in terms of what he's going to produce, but we're giving them Nolan Jones. I think he's kind of run his course with us, have kept him on the team some of the past years, largely because of the captain personality. Don't love him defensively. His bat has been up and down, kind of back in a down phase this year with the 224 average, although he does have 11 homers and 286 at-bats. But he's going to be making around $3.5 million next year. He'll be turning 32 early in the season. Just not really part of our plans. Jake Rogers, as I talked about, we've got Bart in the system who can basically give us similar defense with maybe slightly better offense. I know that several episodes ago when we picked up Rogers, some of you in the comment section made the point that although I gave up a high volume of players, and I kind of felt like I was fine giving up a high volume of players because I wasn't really giving up anyone that I cared about, that I still probably gave up too much for Bart or for Rogers. And I think that assessment of the trade is even fairer right now. His ratings have kind of regressed, and for a backup catcher, feel like I probably did give up too much. The deal's centered around River Ryan. who, as I said, has been really good for us this year. I don't love the influence that he has in the clubhouse with that low leadership. But even more importantly, we kind of need to start opening up some spots on our pitching staff because Raylan Perez has started his rehab assignment. He hasn't allowed a run in 4 innings pitched. He's a proven major leaguer who's been out with a long-term injury that will be back. And then hopefully when we get to September roster expansion will be about the time that Yinger's finishing up his rehab assignment. So we need at least one spot since we'll add a potential spot to the pitching staff when we can expand the rosters in September, but feel that getting rid of Ryan opens up a spot right now for us to bring Raylan Perez back from that rehab assignment. Have to give up shortstop Nick Allen. Pretty good defensively and a good influence. He's a guy we signed in the minors this past season. We've had him in AAA where he's done fine. A player with that glove and that personality, that certainly has some value, although he wasn't on our major league team. But we recently promoted Toshimitsu Kato, who you may remember is a guy we picked up this past off season. We recently promoted him to AAA, and if we were going to bring up a glove-focused shortstop because of injuries or other need, at this point, I think we'd bring up Katu, the 22-year-old that maybe we can build around for several years to come. Anyways, so Katu hit just 242 in high A ball for us, but has hit 312 in double A and now 312 in a very small sample size in triple A for us. The bat, I don't know if it's ever going to really be major league quality, but with that glove, that speed, that ability to bunt as a 25th, 26th man on the roster, I still think there's some potential there. So don't really mind moving on from Allen since he's kind of just a one-year guy anyways. Joel Larson, the first baseman that we talked about that we had included in some of the other deals, really just a pure power guy, no defense, no speed, former 12th round pick. Don't mind giving him up. And then we have to throw in one more player. I was thinking about Aaron Nola. I don't know that sounds, you got Aaron Nola, that's great. No, it's not. He's 36 years old now. You can see his stuff is just a disaster. He's one of the guys that we brought on this year to hopefully help our minor league system. He actually did reasonably well in A-ball. He's now in high A-ball, where he's 4-4 with a 5.63 ERA, and he's also angry at this point because of his role on the team. So he still thinks he's a major leaguer, even though he's struggling in high A-ball. Struggling to hit 90 miles an hour. So we're going to include him just to get a potential negative Nelly off of our team. So if we add Nola in there, the deal is done. We're giving up a lot of volume, and it's going to actually result in 3 changes to our 26-man roster, with Arenado taking over for Jones, bringing up Bart, and then bring in Perez up to replace Ryan on the team. Bart, I think, equals Rogers. Raylan Perez, I think, can do what River Ryan has done. I don't love giving him up because he's obviously got lights out stuff and he's been effective for us this year. But I think bringing a captain personality on board in Arenado, getting rid of a guy who's not the greatest personality, get him out of the clubhouse. And then also, although Ryan is an extremely popular player, Arenado is also an extremely popular player. And I would think that Arenado may be more extremely popular than Ryan is. So it still also could be a situation where we bump that fan interest back up to 100 when everything is netted out from this trade. So we are going to go ahead and complete the deal here and make a big trade. Fans aren't happy that Nolan Jones left, but they do appreciate the leadership of Arenado. Fans are ecstatic that we brought the veteran on board. So our fan interest has taken another bump higher. You can see we haven't been quite selling out the last couple days, so maybe that'll even let us. Actually, we did at one point within the last month or so bump the ticket prices up slightly, just by a shiny quarter, to $32.50 from $32.25, since we seem like we're right on the borderline of being able to sell out while still generating more money than we did a year ago. Also, that did open up a little more money for us to potentially make another move now, and or at least be in a less desperate financial situation over these final weeks of the season. Although I'm actually thinking, though, that part of the reason I had them retain a little bit extra of his contract was right now we've obviously only got 23 guys on the major league roster. So I think that money, I'm assuming they're middle, there are minimum contracts in there. So I don't think it's going to change much when we bring Bart on board. Actually, that took it down a little bit. And then last but not least, we are going to bring Perez off of the IL to bring ourselves back to a 26-man roster. So obviously we're going to tweak our lineups a bit, tweak our pitching staff a bit, and hopefully Arenado being on board will give our offense a little bit of a boost here, particularly against left-handed pitching. Although we have been playing really well over this week, as I've been digging in on all of these wacky little deals that I've been trying to do. You can see we've won 5 in a row since we started this episode, so we certainly have a winning record for the month of July, again at this point at 10-6. We've actually gotten our record against left-handed starters up to 9-9. So after a brutal start to the year, probably had a couple wins against lefties in these past 5 days, and we're back up to 500. But Arenado can definitely help against left-handed pitching, and with his glove will also be our starter against right-handed pitching, allow Kevin Made to move into more of a pure utility infielder role for us, since he hasn't been hitting exceptionally this year. I think it's a small step in the right direction. Nothing revolutionary, but I think we're a little more well equipped to potentially win than we were before we made this trade, and we didn't really give up any key long-term assets to do so. And as we head into the final days before the trade deadline, as I mentioned, we've been playing a bit better of late. We have a 2-game lead on the Mets in the NL East now. We are kind of falling behind a bit, 3 games behind the Astros for the best record in baseball. But certainly if we're able to clinch the best record in the National League and win the NL East, that will still be a very successful season for us if we can do that. Seifu with 68 steals, still hitting over 300 on the year, and he is 3rd in the National League in batter WAR, so certainly looks like he's got a chance to have 100-plus steals again this year. And Ohtani now, who just pitched a one-hit shutout in his last game, 8-7 with a 2.95 ERA, 158 strikeouts in 137 and a third innings pitched, and the highest pitcher WAR in the National League, just ahead of Spencer Strider, who we were trying to somehow weasel our way into bringing him onto the team just a week and a half ago. I don't think that will happen, but I do think we've got the potential to upgrade our left field position. Nick York, who's our right-handed hitting member of the platoon, is having another Nick York season, hitting 284, 10 doubles, 5 homers, and 109 at-bats. He's doing his job out there, a 136 WRC plus on the season, and the concern is, though, he's not the one getting most of the at-bats, since he's the one playing against left-handed pitching. Eric Pena, hitting just 223 this year. Now, he does have good pop with 16 homers and 283 at-bats. but he doesn't walk an inordinate amount of times with just 20 walks on the season, strikes out almost a third of his times up, and you can see his WRC plus is below average this year. I'm thinking about trying to bring on someone who is a better contact hitter for our left fielder against right-handed pitching than Pena. And it does bother me a little to move on from Pena because he has been such a good offensive player for us the last couple of years. Was even named an All-Star in 2028 when he had his best season, 274, 25 homers, and 87 ribbies. Guy that we picked up in the expansion draft. But he's also a guy who's going to be making about $2 million next year. And when we look at his batting ratings, he doesn't jump off the page to me. And when we compare his batting ratings against right-handed pitching, which are almost essentially the same as his against left-handed pitching, with the guy that we can pick up for him, 30-year-old left fielder Alec Burleson. Burleson, with the exception of home run power, is average to above average across the board against right-handed pitching. And he's having a much better year this year with a 115 WRC plus. Now, admittedly, that's perhaps aided a bit by Colorado. You can see he's been a league average to below league average player the last couple of seasons in Toronto. But it also looks like he's been playing every day in Toronto, and we can get him out of the lineup against left-handed pitching here by having York play there. Now, I don't know that Burleson is a long-term fit for us because his arbitration number next year is about $5.5 million. So we are giving up essentially on having Pena as a member of our organization. But right now, we've still got 4 other outfielders in Barofin, Honeycutt, York, and Blaze. And then in AAA, we still have Lang Choi, the 22-year-old who was a minor league free agent signing of ours about a year and a half ago. He's kind of been steadily moving up through the system. Didn't hit too much at the major league level this year, 240 and 25 at-bats. But certainly look at that batting profile, that speed, that defense. He's not going to walk as much as Pena has for us. But otherwise, I think he can be just as productive for us, maybe even a little better in the outfield. Certainly has more speed, and he'll also be a more economical way of kind of being a 4th or 5th outfielder for us. I certainly feel like there's 4th or 5th outfielders that we're going to be able to kind of find in the Rule 5 draft and or cheap in free agency. I know we're kind of going to be up against it financially next year, so I'm not necessarily expecting or thinking that we're going to want to pay Burleson $5.5 million next year, but I don't feel like Pena has an assured roster spot next season anyways, as a guy who's going to be making $2 million, looking at the way he's played this year and looking at his batting ratings. And I do think that bringing Burleson on board right now gives us a bit better offense, particularly against the right-handed pitchers that we're going to be facing most often. So they're basically just looking for us to throw in one more anything into the deal to make it done, which does mean that we can just get it done without even putting in one of those throw-in guys. So we're going to go ahead and send Pena and second baseman Jesus Anguiano, former international free agent signing, did make it to A-ball finally this year where he's hitting 276. Don't see him being a big-time major league player. Like the durability, like the potential for some defensive versatility in the infield, although he's not really all that adept at any defensive positions in the infield with those ratings. Don't think he's got a major league bat, though. Best case scenario, he's a utility infielder or a guy that we can have in AAA and bring up as a utility infielder if we have some injuries more likely. So don't mind throwing him in. a little reticent to get rid of Pena just because he had been so good each of the two previous years. But when I look at his batting profile ratings, I think he's probably actually closer to the guy he's proven to be this year than the guy he was those first 2 years. I like the home run power, but the contact's not great. The defense is meh. Admittedly, the defense is a little better than what we're going to get from Burleson, but when Pena next year starts making more than the league minimum, to me his roster spot starts getting very much in jeopardy. And I think that Burleson can help us more this year. We're trying to win it all. I don't, by any stretch, claim that bringing on Burleson and Arenado are these massive, huge moves that are going to move the needle incredibly. But I do feel that we are marginally better at third base than we were a week ago. And if we make this trade, we're going to be marginally better in left field today than we were yesterday. And we haven't given up a ton that we're committed to for the long term to make those trades. So from my perspective, I think it makes sense. We're going to go ahead and complete the trade, and that's probably going to be about it for us. We'll make another run at Spencer Strider in 2 or 3 days, but I'm guessing the price has not dropped materially enough for it to be something that we're going to be able to get done. All right, we've actually got 2 trades brewing here on trade deadline day 2029. Dodgers have offered us the left-handed pitcher Garrett Crochet, who I think could help our bullpen this year. And they're also offering us minor leaguer Nate Pillow, who's not really much of a prospect, and minor leaguer Brock Thompson, who's not really much of a prospect. But all they're asking for in return is the minor league shortstop Owen Miller. He's one of those guys that we signed this offseason to bolster our FCL team. And he's hitting .314 down there with 6 homers and 102 ribbies. Captain personality, good influence in helping to hopefully make that team a little more competitive. But obviously not a long-term part of our organization. So we could bring the left-handed pitcher Crochet on board, who could help us, because in the deal that we've actually been trying to make, we were removing the left-handed pitcher Javi Atencio from our team. I think Crochet is probably better than Atencio, although Atencio has been a real good pitcher for us at times over the years. But Atencio, another guy who's going to be making over $4.5 million next year, so don't mind moving on from him. And we were going to trade Atencio for Emmanuel Clase to really bolster our bullpen. He's struggled in Boston this year, but you look at the ratings he has, and you look at the pitching stats he's put up over the course of his career, and I don't think he's done at the age of 31. I think he's just gotten incredibly unlucky with a .430 BABIP against him in Fenway this year. So he may just need a change of scenery. And we can bring him on board if we just add in a big player or a big prospect on our team, or Otto Lopez, who is a guy that we have in Albany this year, just some minor league depth that we had signed. So he's not a big part of our organization. So I think I may try to do both of these deals because the potential addition of Clase and Crochet could both really help our bullpen, which is already pretty solid. But when we take a look here at our team statistics, we're now 3rd in starter ERA, 3rd in bullpen ERA. That adds up to 1st in runs scored, runs allowed, rather. But I think objectively bringing those 2 guys on board improves our bullpen, even if we've got to make some difficult decisions outside of the roster spot that we'd open up by trading Atencio. I think if we have to send, the likes of a Melenge, who's now been up long enough that we can send him down to AAA, even though he's been really effective for us this year. Could send him down. I think we have a couple other guys. I think Kyle Backus may still have options. Yeah, and he's another lefty who's been really effective for us this year. But I think that just in terms of the talent level on our team, we're helping ourselves by bringing on both of those arms. And it may end up being a little tricky to make the money work because with the other moves we've made, we do have about $500,000 available right now. But I had kind of structured this trade with Boston to potentially bring Clase on board, with them only retaining 30%, because that was kind of all we needed to do to fit him under getting rid of Atencio. But even though they're retaining 65% of Crochet, he's still a guy who's making $3.5 million. So with the balance that he has left, it's going to be tight whether this all works out or not. But I'm going to try to get both of these done. I guess the first one we're going to do is bring Crochet on board, because I just think for a guy who's a 32-year-old who we have in rookie ball, Crochet with that plus stuff, plus movement, and slightly below average control is better than some of the pitchers that we have on our team right now. And obviously he struggled when we had him in 2027 for a while. Put up a 5.61 ERA for us, but he's been a pretty good pitcher over the course of his career. And we've definitely got a better defense behind him than we did a couple of seasons ago. I don't know how much of it was pitching in Buffalo versus just bad luck. The fact that the BABIP that year was over 400 makes me think it was probably just bad luck. But we're getting him for basically nothing. I don't see a reason not to try to bring him on board. But I'm going to do the Atencio for Clase trade first, because I'm happy to include Otto Lopez in that deal. And you see, that was going to bring us to just the verge of the money. So I think if we do this deal, it may mean that we can't do Crochet, but Clase is definitely the best of these guys we're thinking about adding. So I want to make sure that I get that one done. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Fans not happy that Atencio is gone. They are happy that Clase is on board. Oh, they're very fickle, those fans. Still have fan interest over 100, and get Clase up to the major league roster. Kim, we will put him in AAA. So now we've only got $34,000 available. So it doesn't seem like this will work anymore because we don't have the money to make it work. If we discuss it, we would need them to retain 80% of Crochet's contract. I'll certainly propose that to them. We'll see what they have to say. And they say no way to that, and they want a pretty legitimate prospect in return, so that's not worth it to us. But we've got Classe on board, which I think definitely will help make our bullpen even better. So not a crazy trade deadline, but a very busy trade deadline, adding in a new third baseman, adding in a new left fielder, and now adding in a nice, shiny new arm for the back end of our bullpen with Classe. We'll see what Martinez wants to do, and he would use Classe in a setup role, so I think we'll put Classe more into a stopper role, but and we're going to keep trying to get a little more action for Munoz in our closer role, but gives us another big arm out of the bullpen, which could come in handy as we get closer to the playoffs. So I think it all kind of worked out. We had basically no money at the start of the episode to add players. We've got no money at the end of the episode to add players. But as I said, we've somehow upgraded slightly at third base, left field, and our bullpen. Now, admittedly, I'm not going to claim that it's all perfect. I think we definitely have upgraded for this year. But you could certainly argue that Atencio and or Pena and or River Ryan were going to be players that could have some value for us next year. But I do just feel like in the case of Pena and Atencio particularly, they're getting to the point where they're pretty fairly valued with what they're making in arbitration. And as I said with Ryan, I don't love the personality there with him. So it wasn't costless to bring these guys on board, but I also don't feel like we mortgaged our future with any of the guys that we gave up. And as I said, I do think we are better today than we were a couple weeks ago at the start of this episode. So given that we're in win now mode, my view is that we handled things in a pretty responsible way to hopefully increase our chances of winning this season a little bit. Obviously, if you feel differently, please share those comments in the comments section down below. Always like to hear when you think I'm doing well, but even more importantly, when you think I'm making mistakes. And we won our final game of the month against the Giants 7-5. As you can see, Shohei Ohtani, National League Pitcher of the Month, 4-1 with a 1.40 ERA, 50 strikeouts and just 6 walks in 38 2/3 innings. On the year, 9-7, 281 with 168 strikeouts. So he is definitely having the best season he's had since he became the first high-profile free agent to join the franchise here in Buffalo. Take a look at our team statistics as of the end of July. 14-10 record for the month, so winning record once again when all was said and done. Definitely played better the second half of the month. As we talked about, we actually have slipped to second in runs allowed, fifth in runs scored. That's obviously a pretty proficient combination. Our Pythagorean record is just one worse than we are in the standings, so we've gotten a tiny bit lucky. Still 500 against left-handed pitching, but doing pretty well against right-handed pitching, winning over 70% of our games at home, a little above 500 on the road. Maybe a little lucky with a winning percentage close to 600 in one-run games, but nothing other than the fact that we strike out at the plate in an inordinate amount of time that seems like a particular concern in the offensive and defensive and pitching rankings for this team with a couple months left to go in the season. And with those couple months left, our lead on the Mets is a game and a half. We've got also a game and a half lead on the Mets for the best record in the National League. The Astros at 69-38 are the best record in baseball, and they're 3.5 up on us at this point. So starting to become a little harder to overcome that lead if we want to have the best record in baseball. But quite honestly, if we win the NL East, we will have achieved our goal. I guess there is a chance that we could win the NL East, and Cincinnati, who took us out in the NLCS last year and went on to win the World Series, could end up with a better record than us. But I think the most important thing for us to do right now is to ensure that we win the NL East, and then we will let the chips fall where they may, as far as whether that means we've also got the best record in the National League or the best record in baseball overall. Seifu continues to lead the league in stolen bases, continues to be third in the league in batter WAR, and Otani easily leading the National League in pitcher WAR at this point after that very strong month of July. And as we finish up the episode, the last couple of weeks have actually been pretty good for the two rookie level teams that we were hoping would be better this year. The DSL team actually has a winning record this point as they get close to their final couple weeks of the season. And even our FCL team has a winning percentage up to .437. Our A-ball team remains a problem. High A, not that great, and then pretty average, quite honestly, in AAA and AA at this point. But, my main goal is to avoid having teams with winning percentages below 400. So we've got a little work to do with our Class A team at this point, probably being that we're getting into the final month of the minor league season for most parts of our organization. I am going to spend a little time offline, perhaps promoting some guys from the rookie level teams to the A-ball team. Maybe that'll help the performance in Marathon out in the Keys down the stretch of the season, and just ensuring that some of our better prospects get an opportunity to maybe test themselves at a somewhat more difficult level over the final few weeks of the minor league season. One guy in particular, Ali Ostendorf, has not really improved much this year in rookie ball, but he's now spent 3 years in rookie ball. He's going to be turning 21 this off season. The control is still the area that he's just not improving on, which is starting to become a major concern of mine. But I think at this point he's got about 150 innings pitched over 3 years in rookie ball. I'm going to promote him to A-ball and just hopefully get a better sense of what we have or don't have. Still listed as the number 77 prospect in baseball. Still has 3 pitches that look like they are getting pretty close to major league quality. But that control, unless it improves, is going to be a huge issue. Walking a batter per inning this year, which sadly is significantly improved from where he was a year ago, but he's allowing twice as many home runs this time around. So I do question how much Ali, who was a second overall pick for us a couple seasons ago, is really going to develop. But might as well see what he can do at A-ball at his age. I don't know how much he's learning at rookie ball at this point, although his performance on the field has not been inspiring. And as we get ready to finish up the episode, Hayden Yinger looks like he's only about a week away with that elbow inflammation. He had been a really great pitcher for us at the beginning of this season, and obviously was incredibly effective for us last year after we brought him over in that trade with Toronto. 14-3, 251 last year, 5-1, 174 this year. So although we were not able to bring on Spencer Strider, am happy with the additions that we did make, and hopefully bringing Yinger back to the majors over the next few weeks after he gets a couple rehab starts under his belt will seem like a big addition and like we made a big trade. Before I finish up, obviously it's going to be a very small sample size. Clase hasn't even pitched for us yet, but we'll check in on the other two guys. Arenado, hitting 300 with a homer in 30 at-bats. Admittedly, a very small sample size, but that offensive production is certainly better than what we had been getting at third base from Nolan Jones, and obviously an even smaller sample size for Burleson, hitting 508 at bats, though. Again, extremely small sample size, but certainly initial returns on both of those guys are that we're going to hopefully get more from Arenado than we got from Jones, and we're hopefully going to get more from Burleson than we had been getting from Pena. And with that, we will call it an episode. Look forward to seeing what this team does down the stretch, whether we're able to hopefully win the NL East for a second consecutive year, get a first round playoff bye, and then hopefully, as I talked about at the top of the episode, see if we can advance past the NLCS this year into the World Series. And we'll find out what our seeding is going to look like for the playoffs in our next episode when we'll finish up the regular season. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.